The ER was loud, until it wasn't. A 7-foot giant exploded through the doors, fists swinging, guards dropping, 300 pounds of rage barreling toward anyone in his path. And then a rookie nurse, blonde, quiet, 3 weeks on the job, stepped in front of him. No weapon, no backup. 3 seconds later, the giant was on the floor. What nobody knew was where she learned that move. It wasn't nursing school. It wasn't self-defense class. She learned it as a Navy SEAL, the night her partner bled out in her arms. St. Gabriel's Medical Center, Chicago, Tuesday night, the shift that changed everything. Before we begin, subscribe, follow this story to the very end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Grace Mercer had a rule. Don't be seen. Don't be remembered. Don't be the one they talk about when the shift ends. For 3 weeks, it had worked. She showed up early. She restocked supply carts. She took vitals on patients nobody else wanted to touch. She apologized more than she spoke, moved like a shadow through the halls of St. Gabriel's emergency department, and kept her hands busy so no one would notice how still they were. The senior nurses had already made their judgment. "Sweet girl," one said during a break, "won't last the month." "Too soft," another agreed. "She flinches when the trauma alerts go off." They weren't wrong about the flinching. They were wrong about everything else. Dr. Nathan Cross, chief of emergency medicine, had given her the standard speech on her first shift. He didn't sugarcoat it. That wasn't his style. "This place eats people," he told her, arms crossed, eyes measuring. "Not bad people, good people. People who care too much and move too slow. You understand?" Grace had nodded, eyes on the floor. "I understand, doctor. People die in seconds here, not minutes, seconds. If you freeze, someone else pays for it." "I won't freeze." Cross had studied her for a moment longer, then walked away. He didn't believe her. He'd heard that promise from dozens of rookies. Most of them quit before the first body bag. He filed Grace Mercer in the back of his mind under temporary and forgot about her. That was his first mistake. Tuesday night started ugly and got worse. 3 car accidents, a stabbing, a grandmother coding in Bay 4 while her grandson screamed in the hallway. The board was full, the staff was short, tempers were running hot, and patience was running out. Grace worked the edges, staying invisible. She delivered meds. She cleaned up after a teenager who'd overdosed and vomited across an entire gurney. She held the hand of an elderly man who kept asking for his wife, a wife the chart said had died 6 years ago. "She's coming," Grace told him softly. "She's just running late." He smiled and closed his eyes. Grace pulled the blanket higher over his chest and moved on. Nobody noticed. That was the point. At 11:47 p.m., everything changed. The automatic doors didn't open. They blew apart. The force was so sudden that 2 nurses near the entrance stumbled backward. A tray of instruments crashed to the floor. And then he was inside, 7 feet tall, easily 300 pounds, arms like industrial pipe, covered in black tattoos that ran from his knuckles to somewhere beneath his shirt collar. Names, dates, symbols. His face was flushed a deep, dangerous red. His chest heaved. His fists were clenched so tight the knuckles had gone white. "Where is she?" he roared. His name was Dominic Hale, but nobody knew that yet. All they knew was that a giant had just stormed into their ER, and he wasn't stopping. Security moved first. 2 guards, both trained, both experienced, converged on him from either side. The first one grabbed Dominic's arm. Dominic didn't even look at him. He swung once, and the guard hit the wall so hard, a mounted hand sanitizer dispenser cracked off its bracket. The second guard went low, trying for a takedown. Dominic shrugged him off like a wet jacket. The guard slid across the tile and stopped against a wheelchair. "Get out of my way!" Dominic screamed. "She's dying!" "Where is she?" Doctors froze. Nurses back behind counters. A mother pulled her child close and ducked into a bathroom. Someone shouted, "Call the police!" Someone else reached for the panic button and missed it with shaking fingers. Dominic kept moving, straight down the main corridor, toward the trauma bays, toward patients who couldn't run. And then, standing directly in his path, was Grace Mercer. She hadn't run. She hadn't hidden. She hadn't called for help. She was just there, feet planted, hands raised, palms open, eyes steady. A resident behind the nurse's station whispered, "Oh God, she's going to get killed." Dominic saw her and didn't slow down. His eyes were wild, not with rage, Grace realized, with terror. She'd seen that look before. She'd seen it on men twice his size in places far worse than this. "Get out of my way," he said, voice dropping. A warning. Grace didn't move. "Tell me her name." "Move! Tell me her name and I'll help you find her," he swung. It wasn't a calculated attack. It was a desperate, panicked swipe from a man whose brain had stopped processing anything except the need to get to someone he loved. His fist cut through the air with enough force to crack bone. Grace moved, not backward, into him. Her left hand redirected his arm at the wrist. Her right found the pressure point behind his elbow. She stepped into his center of gravity, hooked his ankle, and used his own momentum against him. 3 seconds. 300 pounds of muscle folded, not smashed, not injured, controlled. He hit the tile on his back, and before he could react, Grace had him pinned. Wrist locked, shoulder immobilized, her knee creating just enough pressure to keep him down without hurting him. The sound of his body hitting the floor echoed once. Then silence. Complete physical silence. Every single person in that ER was staring at the rookie nurse. A surgeon standing near Bay 2 whispered, "What the hell did she just do?" Grace checked Dominic's airway. She checked his pupils. She placed 2 fingers on his neck and counted his pulse like this was any other patient on any other night. Then she looked up at the frozen staff and said quietly, "Please sedate him. He's not violent. He's panicking." Nobody moved. "Now," Grace said, not loud, but final. A nurse grabbed a syringe. Within minutes, Dominic Hale was sedated, restrained, and crying on the floor of St. Gabriel's emergency department. Grace stood up, adjusted her badge, and walked back to the supply cart she'd been restocking before the doors blew open. Her hands didn't shake. The whispers started before the sedation fully kicked in. "Did you see that?" a resident hissed at the nurse's station. "She dropped him in 3 seconds. "That's not a nursing move," another said. "That's not any move I've ever seen." "Who the hell is she?" Grace heard all of it. She kept her head down and continued counting gauze pads. Dr. Cross heard it too. He'd watched the entire thing from the doorway of his office, coffee frozen halfway to his mouth. He set the cup down slowly and stared at Grace's back. Something cold crawled up his spine. Not fear, recognition. He'd seen movement like that exactly once before, during a joint training exercise with special operations personnel at Walter Reed. The economy, the precision, the way she didn't hurt him when she easily could have. Cross picked up the phone and called the charge nurse. "Pull Grace Mercer's personnel file. Bring it to my office." "Right now? We're slammed." "Right now." On the floor, Dominic was crying. Not quietly, deep, shuddering sobs that shook his massive frame. Tears cut through the anger on his face and dripped onto the tile. "She's dying," he choked out to anyone who would listen. "My sister, she's dying. You have to help her. Please, please." Grace knelt beside him. She didn't touch him. She just got low, so her eyes were level with his. "What's her name?" Grace asked. "Megan," his voice cracked. "Megan Hale. Someone hurt her. Someone," he couldn't finish. "We're going to help Megan," Grace said, "but I need you to breathe for me. Can you do that?" He tried. It came out ragged and broken. "Again," Grace said. "Slower." He tried again. Better. "Good, that's good, Dominic." He blinked. How do you know my name? Grace glanced at his left forearm. Among the tattoos, the names, the dates, Dominic was inked in a child's handwriting. Below it, in the same hand, Megan. Lucky guess, she said. Something flickered in his eyes. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it, the first crack in the wall. Megan Hale arrived 7 minutes later on a gurney, and Grace knew immediately that the intake story was wrong. The paramedics reported a fall, chemical exposure from a household accident, but Grace stood beside the gurney, and everything in her body said otherwise. The burns were too patterned. The bruising didn't match a fall. It matched being held down. The smell was wrong, sharp and metallic with something sweet underneath, a combination that civilian accidents don't produce. And Megan's hands were trembling, not from shock, from something still in her system. Grace looked at Dominic, still restrained in the hallway, watching his sister with hollow eyes. She looked at the blank space on his wrist, the one tattoo he hadn't finished. She understood. The team went to work. Standard protocol, fluids, imaging, stabilization, cross-supervised, calm and efficient. But Grace watched the monitors like they were lying to her. Her sats are dropping, a resident noted. Push fluids and get the imaging, Cross ordered. Grace said nothing. She adjusted the IV line. She repositioned the pulse oximeter. She watched. Then the seizure hit. Megan's body locked up. Alarm screamed. The team surged forward, Cross shouting orders, residents scrambling, nurses grabbing crash cart supplies. Lorazepam, 2 milligrams, push it now, Cross barked. Grace spoke once, not loud, but it cut through everything. Stop, this isn't trauma, treat the toxin, Cross spun on her. You don't know that. Grace met his eyes. For the first time since she'd arrived at St. Gabriel's, there was no apology, no softness, no deference, just certainty. I know exactly what this is, she said. That smell. It's organophosphate mixed with something else. Her body isn't seizing from injury, it's seizing from poison. If you treat for trauma, she'll code in 4 minutes. You're a rookie nurse, Cross said, his voice tight. You've been here 3 weeks, and she'll be dead in 4 minutes. Do you want to argue about my resume, or do you want to save her? Silence. Cross stared at her. The room stared at her. Atropine, Cross said finally. 2 milligrams, now. They pushed it. Grace counted under her breath. The seizure slowed. Megan's color improved. The monitors steadied. The room exhaled. Cross didn't look at Grace. He couldn't. Because she'd been right, and he had almost been fatally wrong. In the hallway, Dominic had heard everything. He was shaking. Not with rage this time, with something worse. Gratitude and terror mixed together until they were the same thing. 20 minutes later, the ER had settled into a fragile calm. Megan was stable. Dominic had been unrestrained and sat beside her bed, holding her hand with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. Grace brought him a cup of water. He couldn't meet her eyes. You didn't fight me, he said finally. Back there, you could have hurt me. Everyone saw you could have hurt me, but you didn't. No, Grace said. Why? Because hurting you wasn't the point, stopping you was. He looked up at her. That's different. Yes, Grace said. It is. He was quiet for a moment. Then, where'd you learn to do that? Grace set the cup on the table. Get some rest. Your sister needs you strong tomorrow. She walked away before he could ask again. In his office, Cross opened Grace Mercer's personnel file and found almost nothing. Nursing degree from a small college in Virginia. Clinical hours at a rural hospital in Kentucky. Clean background check. No red flags. Too clean. That was what bothered him. No social media. No previous employment history before nursing school. No emergency contact listed. The file read like it had been constructed, not lived. Cross picked up his phone and called a man he hadn't spoken to in 4 years. Colonel Raymond Briggs, retired, now consulting for the VA. They'd served together briefly, Cross as a combat medic, Briggs as an intelligence officer. They didn't like each other, but they trusted each other, and in Cross's experience, that was more valuable. "Ray, it's Nathan Cross." A pause. "Nathan, it's midnight." "I know, I need you to run a name for me." "I'm retired." Grace Mercer, mid-30s, nursing background that doesn't add up. Tonight she took down a 300-pound man using a military restraint technique I've only seen once in my life. And then she identified an organophosphate exposure that my entire team missed. Silence on the line. A long silence. "Ray? Where did you say she's working?" "St. Gabriel's, Chicago, ER." Another silence. Then Briggs spoke and his voice had changed. Harder. Careful. "Stop asking questions, Nathan." "Ray, I mean it. Whatever you think you know, you don't. And whatever you're about to dig up, you're going to wish you hadn't." "Is she dangerous?" Briggs laughed. A short, humorless sound. "She's the opposite. That's the problem. Some people are alive right now because Grace Mercer doesn't exist on paper. You understand what I'm telling you?" Cross understood. He wished he didn't. "Leave it alone," Briggs said. "Let her be a nurse. Let her save people. And for God's sake, stop pulling her file." The line went dead. Cross sat in the dark for a long time. The coffee on his desk went cold. Through the glass wall of his office, he could see Grace Mercer in the hallway, restocking a supply cart. Quiet, invisible, exactly the way she wanted to be. But he'd seen her eyes when she challenged him over Megan Hale. He'd seen the way she moved when Dominic swung at her. He'd heard the authority in her voice, the kind that doesn't come from textbooks or classrooms or even years of experience. It comes from command, from life and death decisions made in places where the wrong call means body bags. Cross closed the file. He didn't know who Grace Mercer really was. Not yet. But St. Gabriel's ER was about to find out. Because the night wasn't over. Not even close. Down the hall, a new alert flashed on the board. Multiple incoming. Highway pileup. Unknown chemical exposure from an overturned cargo truck. ETA. 8 minutes. Grace looked at the board. Her hand paused on the gauze she was stacking. And something behind her eyes, something she'd spent years burying, woke up. 8 minutes. That was all they had. Grace read the incoming alert one more time, and the words "unknown chemical exposure" burned through her like a current she hadn't felt in years. Her fingers stopped moving. The gauze she'd been stacking sat untouched. Something deep in her chest, something she'd locked away behind years of silence and fake smiles and, "Yes, doctor," cracked open. She closed her eyes for exactly 2 seconds. When she opened them, she wasn't the rookie anymore. Cross burst out of his office, already barking orders. "All hands! Multiple incoming! Highway pileup! Fire involved! Cargo truck rollover! Unknown chemical exposure! I need every bay cleared and every available nurse on the floor, now!" The room moved, but wrong. Too slow, too scattered. Nurses bumped into each other. A resident dropped a tray of intubation supplies and scrambled to pick them up with shaking hands. The charge nurse fumbled with the triage board, erasing names, rewriting them, erasing again. Fear had its teeth in the room. Grace could smell it. She watched for 3 seconds, counted the bodies in motion, counted the ones frozen, calculated the space, the equipment, the hands available. Then she spoke. 2 triage lines. Her voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a hammer on glass. "Anyone with respiratory distress stays out of the main bay. We separate them until we know what they breathed in. If we mix contaminated patients with clean ones, we lose the whole room." A second-year resident named Davis spun around. "That's not protocol. We don't split triage on an MCI without—" "Protocol assumes you know what the exposure is," Grace said, looking at him. "We don't. You want to be the one who explains to the families why half the ER went down because we followed a checklist?" Davis opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Cross stood in the corridor, watching. Every instinct told him to override her. She was a 3-week rookie giving orders to residents who outranked her. But the call with Briggs was still echoing in his skull. Some people are alive because Grace Mercer doesn't exist on paper. And the way she'd saved Megan Hale an hour ago had shattered every assumption he'd made about her. "Do it," Cross said. 2 lines. "Grace takes respiratory. Davis, you're on trauma. Move." Davis stared at Cross like he'd lost his mind. Cross stared back until Davis moved. Grace was already gone. She'd commandeered Base 6 and Base 7 for the respiratory cases, repositioned 2 crash carts, and grabbed a nurse named Linda, 20-year veteran, steady hands, and pulled her close. "Linda, I need you on airway kits. Don't wait for orders. If someone can't breathe, you tube them. Don't ask, don't check with me, just do it." Linda looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted behind her eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Right now, I'm the person who needs you to trust me for the next 2 hours. Can you do that?" Linda nodded slowly. Yeah, I can do that." "Good. Don't leave this bay." 12:03 a.m. The doors opened. The first stretcher came in fast. A man in his 40s, construction vest half melted onto his skin, coughing up pink foam. His eyes were rolling. His hands clawed at his own throat. "Base 6, Grace called. She was beside him before the paramedic finished the handoff. She tilted his head, cleared his airway, and had an oxygen mask sealed before the attending physician even reached the bed. "What's his exposure?" the attending Dr. Patel asked. "Unknown, but this foam is consistent with pulmonary edema from chemical inhalation. Treat it like organophosphate until we know otherwise." Patel frowned. "That's a big assumption. It's the assumption that keeps him alive. The other one doesn't." Patel hesitated, then ordered atropine. The man's breathing stabilized within 90 seconds. 12:06 a.m., second stretcher. A woman, mid-50s, unconscious. No visible burns, but her skin had a gray tint that made Grace's stomach drop. "She's not breathing on her own," the paramedic reported. "Went down at the scene, no response to sternal rub." Grace grabbed the bag valve mask and started ventilating. "Get me a crick kit," she said to Linda. "A crick kit? We haven't even tried. Her airway is swelling shut. Feel her neck." Linda pressed 2 fingers against the woman's throat and went pale. "Oh, God." "Crick kit, now." Linda ran. Grace kept bagging, counting, keeping rhythm. When Linda came back, Grace's hands moved with a precision that made Patel stop what he was doing and stare. The cricothyrotomy was clean, fast, textbook perfect. Except no textbook taught you to do it that calm, under that much pressure. The woman gasped. Air rushed in. Her color shifted from gray towards something resembling life. Patel said nothing. He just stepped back and let Grace work. 11 a.m. The ER was filling up. 7 patients in 15 minutes. 3 more incoming. The noise was building. Alarms, voices, the squeak of gurney wheels on tile, the hiss of oxygen tanks. Grace moved between beds like she was running a chessboard. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. Every step had a purpose. Every word was aimed. "Turn him on his side. He's aspirating. That IV is too slow. Open it up. Don't give her morphine. Not until we rule out respiratory depression." A young nurse, barely out of school, name tag reading Sophie, stood frozen beside a teenager who was seizing on a stretcher. The girl's body was jerking hard, her back arching, spit flying from her clenched teeth. Sophie's hands were shaking so badly she couldn't draw up the medication. Grace appeared beside her, not rushing, not grabbing the syringe away. She placed her hand over Sophie's. "Look at me," Grace said. "Not her, me." Sophie's eyes locked onto Grace's. "You know what to do. Your hands know what to do. Let them." Sophie swallowed, drew up the lorazepam, pushed it, The seizure slowed. The girl's body relaxed. Sophie let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in her chest for an hour. Good, Grace said. That was you. Not me. You. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded and moved to the next patient. Cross watched from across the bay. He'd managed mass casualty events before. He'd run ERs during flu surges, building collapses, gang shootings. He knew what controlled chaos looked like. This wasn't chaos. This was something else. Grace Mercer wasn't managing a crisis. She was conducting it, like she'd done it 1,000 times. Like the screaming and the blood and the alarms were a language she spoke fluently. He pulled his phone out and texted Briggs one line. Who was she? Briggs didn't respond. 12:22 a.m. The cargo truck driver arrived, burns over 40% of his body, conscious, screaming, fighting the restraints. 2 paramedics were struggling to hold him down. Get it off me! Get it off! It's still burning. Grace intercepted the stretcher. What was in the truck? Manifest says industrial solvents, the paramedic panted, but the hazmat team hasn't confirmed yet. What did it smell like at the scene? The paramedic blinked. What? The chemical. What did it smell like? Sweet maybe? Like almonds, but wrong. Grace's face changed. It was subtle. A tightening around her jaw, a slight narrowing of her eyes, but Cross saw it from 20 feet away, and it stopped him cold. Clear the bay, Grace said. What? Patel looked up. Clear this bay right now. Get every non-essential person out. Grace, we can't just... That smell is hydrogen cyanide. If his clothes are still off-gassing, everyone in this bay is breathing it. Clear the bay. Now. The words hydrogen cyanide hit the room like a grenade. Patel went white. Linda grabbed Sophie and pulled her toward the door. 2 residents stumbled over each other trying to get out. Not you, Grace said to Patel. I need you. Gloves, mask, and stay upwind. We have maybe 3 minutes before his levels become our levels. Patel's hands were shaking, but he stayed. They worked fast, cutting away contaminated clothing, bagging it, flushing the burns with saline. Grace's hands never stopped moving. The truck driver screamed, then went quiet. Too quiet. He's crashing, Patel said, voice cracking. Pulse is dropping, sats falling. Hydroxycobalamin, Grace said. It's the antidote. Does this hospital stock it? I don't know. Find out, now. Call pharmacy. Tell them cyanide exposure, mass casualty. We need every vial they have. Patel ran. Grace kept working, one hand maintaining the airway, the other adjusting the IV rate. She was alone with a dying man in a contaminated bay, and her breathing hadn't changed once. But inside her head, she was somewhere else. Sand. Heat so thick it had weight. A forward operating base in a country whose name she'd been told to forget. Jack Calloway crouched beside her, checking his weapon, grinning like they weren't 12 hours into a mission that had already gone sideways. You worry too much, Mercer. Someone has to. Yeah, but does it have to be you every single time? Yes. He'd laughed. That laugh, open, warm, completely inappropriate for the situation, was the thing she missed most. More than his voice, more than his face. That laugh, like the world was a joke only he understood, and he was generous enough to share it. The truck driver's monitor flatlined. Grace blinked. The desert vanished. She was back. Gloves, tile, the sharp sting of chemicals in her nose. She started compressions, counted out loud, steady, perfect. The same rhythm she'd used on Jack when his blood was pooling on the ground and the helicopter was 9 minutes away, and 9 minutes was a lifetime and a death sentence all at once. Come on, she whispered, not tonight. Patel burst back in with 3 vials of hydroxycobalamin. They pushed it. Grace kept compressing. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The monitor screamed its flat, mechanical accusation. Then a blip. Weak, uneven. Another. Another. Rhythm. Faint but real. Grace stepped back. Her jaw was clenched so tight her teeth ached. She peeled off her gloves, dropped them in the hazmat bag, and walked out of the bay. In the hallway, she pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes. Jack's voice, fading now, like a radio losing signal. If I go down, you don't stop. You keep moving. I'm moving, she whispered. I'm still moving. 12:41 a.m. Cross found her there. She'd already composed herself, back straight, eyes clear, hands still. But he'd seen the 2 seconds before she noticed him. He'd seen the fracture. You identified cyanide exposure from a paramedic's description of a smell, he said quietly. Then you performed a solo resuscitation in a contaminated bay. Then you walked out here and almost fell apart. Grace looked at him. I didn't fall apart. You were close. Close doesn't count. Cross leaned against the wall beside her. How many times have you done this? Done what? Saved everyone else while pretending you don't need saving yourself. Grace didn't answer. I called someone tonight, Cross said carefully. Someone I used to serve with. I asked about you. Grace's body went rigid, almost imperceptibly, but Cross caught it. He told me to stop digging. He told me some people are alive because they don't exist on paper. Cross paused. He also told me to let you be a nurse and let you save people. Smart man. Grace. She turned to him. Her eyes were dry, but something behind them was drowning. You were a SEAL, Cross said. It wasn't a question. Grace held his gaze for a long time. The ER noise washed around them. Alarms, footsteps, voices. But in that hallway, the silence between them was louder than all of it. I was a lot of things, she said finally. And your partner, don't. The word came out sharp, surgical, a blade designed to cut a conversation off at the root. Cross raised both hands slightly. Okay. Grace exhaled, slow, controlled, the way you breathe when you're keeping something caged. His name was Jack, she said, and it sounded like it cost her something vital to say it. He died because I made a choice and I was wrong. That's all you need to know. That's not all I need to know, but it's all I'll ask for tonight. Grace nodded once. Then she pushed off the wall and walked back toward the trauma bays because there were still patients bleeding and the world didn't stop just because hers had. 12:58 a.m. The last ambulance from the pileup unloaded a 6-year-old boy named Caleb. Smoke inhalation. 3rd-degree burns on his left arm. He was conscious but barely. Eyes half open, breath coming in shallow, rattling gasps. His mother ran alongside the stretcher, barefoot, still in a nightgown, screaming his name. Caleb! Baby, Mama's here. Caleb! A nurse tried to stop her at the bay entrance. The mother shoved past. 2 more staff members grabbed her arms. She fought like an animal. Let me go. That's my son. Let me. Grace stepped in front of her. Close. Steady. What's your name? Grace asked. Let me. What's your name? The mother's wild eyes focused on Grace. Karen. Karen Powell. Karen, I'm Grace. I'm going to take care of Caleb, but I need you to let me. Can you do that? He's only 6. I know. And I'm going to fight for him. I promise you that. But I need room to work. Karen Powell's legs gave out. Grace caught her, held her up, one arm around her waist, and guided her to a chair. She grabbed a blanket from a passing cart and wrapped it around Karen's shoulders. Stay here. I'll come to you, I promise. Grace turned and walked into the bay. Caleb was gray. His oxygen saturation was dropping fast. The attending physician, a young doctor named Rivera, was calling for intubation. His airway is too swollen, Rivera said, panic leaking into his voice. I can't visualize the cords. I can't get the tube in. Let me, Grace said. I've tried twice. Let me. Rivera stepped aside. Grace took the laryngoscope, adjusted Caleb's head position by millimeters, and slid the tube in on the first attempt. Clean, precise. Rivera stared at her. How did you? Smaller jaw. You were coming in too steep. Grace connected the ventilator. Push dexamethasone for the swelling, and get me a pediatric burn protocol. His arm needs debridement within the hour, or he'll lose function. Rivera nodded, speechless, and ran. Grace stood beside Caleb's bed. He was so small. His hand, the unburned one, lay open on the mattress, fingers curled slightly, like he'd been holding something and let go. She picked up his hand, held it. You're safe, Caleb, she whispered. You hang on. 14 a.m. The surge was over. The last patient had been stabilized. The ER looked like a battlefield. Supplies scattered, floors streaked, staff slumped against walls and counters, with the hollow stare of people who'd just been through something they'd spent years processing. Grace was charting, quietly, methodically, like the last 2 hours hadn't happened. Linda sat down beside her, said nothing for a full minute. Then, I've been a nurse for 22 years, Grace kept writing. I've worked ERs in Detroit, Memphis, and Southside Chicago. I've seen gunshot wounds, stabbings, car wrecks, overdoses. I've held people while they died. I've told families their children weren't coming home. Grace's pen paused. I have never, Linda said, her voice thick, seen anyone do what you did tonight. Not a nurse, not a doctor, not anyone. Grace looked at her. I just did my job. No, you did something else, and you and I both know it. Grace held Linda's gaze. For a moment, it looked like she might say something real, something true, something that would explain the hands that never shake, and the voice that never breaks, and the eyes that have seen things no nursing school teaches you to survive. Instead, she said, Caleb's mother is still in the hallway. Someone should bring her a coffee. Linda shook her head slowly. You are the strangest woman I've ever met, Grace Mercer. I know. Linda went to get the coffee. Grace finished charting, set down the pen, and pressed her palms flat against the desk. She held them there, steady, perfectly steady. Then, beneath the desk where no one could see, her left hand began to tremble. Just once, just barely. She pressed it harder against the surface until it stopped. 1:23 a.m. Across the ER, Dominic Hale sat beside his sleeping sister and stared at Grace through the glass partition. He'd watched everything, the pile-up victims, the cyanide exposure, the little boy. He'd watched her move through it all like a woman who'd spent her whole life walking through fire and had simply decided not to burn. He looked down at his massive hands, the hands that had thrown 2 security guards across a room, the hands that had swung at a woman half his size. She fights like she loves, he murmured. Megan stirred, her eyelids fluttered, her fingers twitched. Meg? Dominic leaned forward, voice breaking. Meg, can you hear me? Her eyes opened, glassy, unfocused, but open. Dom? Her voice was a thread. I'm here. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Megan's cracked lips moved into something that tried to be a smile. You scared? Dominic laughed, a wet, broken sound. Terrified. Good, she whispered. Means you're paying attention. She closed her eyes again. Her breathing steadied. Dominic pressed his forehead to her hand and wept without making a sound. Grace watched from the hallway. She didn't go in. Some moments were sacred, and she'd learned long ago that the strongest thing you could do was let people break in peace. But something in Dominic's grief reached through the glass and found the place where she kept Jack. The locked room inside her chest where she'd stored his laugh, his voice, the way he'd tap his helmet like everything was a joke. The room rattled. She turned away before it opened. 1:38 a.m. Cross was waiting at the nurse's station. He had a fresh cup of coffee in each hand. He held one out to Grace. She took it. They stood in silence. The boy is going to make it, Cross said. I know. The truck driver too. Pharmacy confirmed the hydroxycobalamin worked. Good, Cross sipped his coffee. I owe you an apology. Grace looked at him sideways. First day. I told you this place wasn't for people who freeze. He paused. I was wrong. About all of it. You weren't wrong, Grace said. This place isn't for people who freeze. You just assumed I was one of them. Yes, I did. Most people do. It's easier. Cross nodded slowly. How long are you planning to keep this up? The quiet act, the invisible routine. Grace stared into her coffee. As long as it works. After tonight, it doesn't work anymore. Everyone in this ER saw what you did. Everyone. Grace said nothing, because he was right, and the truth of it sat in her stomach like a stone. Cross set down his cup. I'm not going to ask you again who you were, but I need to know, whoever you were, is that person going to put my staff in danger? Grace turned to him. Her eyes were steady but tired, so tired. The person I was spent her whole life keeping people alive, she said. Sometimes she failed. Sometimes the cost was more than anyone should pay. But she never, not once, put the wrong people in harm's way. Cross held her gaze. Then he nodded. Okay, he said. That's enough. He walked away. Grace stood alone at the nurse's station, coffee cooling in her hands, and listened to the hum of monitors and the whisper of ventilators and the small, ordinary sounds of a hospital trying to heal itself after a night that had broken every rule she'd built her new life on. Then the radio crackled. Not the EMS frequency, a secure channel, one that made Cross stop in his tracks and turn back with a face drained of color. Trauma Bay 3, he said quietly. Now. Grace set down the coffee and followed, because whatever was coming next, she already knew. The way you know a storm is close before the first thunder hits. She could feel it in her bones. The same bones that had carried her through deserts, through firefights, to the worst night of her life. The bones that remembered everything she tried to forget. 1:42 a.m. The patient arrived without a name, no ID, no wallet, no phone, no story that made sense. 2 paramedics wheeled him in through the side entrance, not the main doors, not the ambulance bay. The side entrance that Cross had to unlock with a code Grace had never seen him use before. The man on the stretcher was late 30s, muscular build, dark hair matted with sweat and something darker. His clothes were civilian, jeans, a gray t-shirt, but they'd been put on recently, too clean for the injuries underneath, too deliberate. Cross intercepted the paramedics. Who called this in? Anonymous tip. Found him in a parking structure off West Randolph. No witnesses, no cameras, nothing. That's not possible. Every structure downtown has cameras. The paramedic shrugged. Cameras were disabled. Whoever dropped him knew what they were doing. Cross looked at Grace. She was already moving toward the stretcher, pulling on gloves, her eyes scanning the patient with an intensity that had nothing to do with nursing. She stopped. Her hands hovered over his torso. She didn't touch him. She just looked. And Cross watched the color drain from her face one shade at a time, like watching a sunset in reverse. Grace? She didn't answer. Her eyes moved across the injuries, the bruising on his ribs, the marks on his wrists, the small, precise entry wounds along his left side, with a recognition that went beyond medical training. This wasn't an assault, Grace said. Her voice had changed, flatter, colder. The warmth she used with patients, with Dominic, with Karen Powell, with little Caleb, was gone. What replaced it was steel. Rivera, who'd followed them in, frowned. Multiple blunt force trauma, possible stab wounds. How is that not an assault? Look at the bruising pattern, Grace said. Symmetrical, controlled spacing, same force applied to each impact site. She pointed without touching. These aren't stab wounds, they're puncture marks, uniform depth, uniform angle. Whoever did this used the same instrument every time with the same amount of pressure. Rivera shook his head. So someone was methodical. That's still assault. No, Grace looked at him. That's interrogation. The word landed in the room like a bomb that hadn't gone off yet. Everyone felt the shockwave, but nobody moved. Cross stepped closer. You're saying someone tortured this man? I'm saying someone who was trained to extract information used techniques designed to cause maximum pain without organ damage. Grace's voice didn't waver. He was meant to survive. He was meant to be found. This is a message. A message to who? Rivera asked. Grace didn't answer, because the answer was crawling up her spine like ice water, and she wasn't ready to say it out loud. 1:51 a.m. They stabilized him, barely. His vitals kept dipping and recovering in a pattern Grace recognized. The body shutting down in waves. Not from the injuries themselves, but from what they'd triggered. Stress cardiomyopathy. The heart literally breaking under the weight of what the mind had endured. Grace worked beside Cross, their hands moving in tandem, a rhythm neither of them had planned but both fell into naturally. She adjusted the ventilator settings. He managed the central line. She called out medication adjustments before the monitors confirmed what she already knew. Norepinephrine drip, 0.1 mics per kilo, she said. Cross glanced at her. How do you know that dose? Because his blood pressure is going to drop again in about 90 seconds, and the standard dose won't catch it. 87 seconds later, the blood pressure crashed. The norepinephrine caught it. Cross didn't ask how she knew. He was running out of questions he was willing to hear the answers to. 2:04 a.m. The man woke up screaming, not words, not at first, just sound, raw, animal, torn from somewhere so deep it didn't sound human. His body jerked against the restraints. His eyes flew open but saw nothing in the room. He was somewhere else. His hands clawed at the air, reaching for something, fighting something invisible. Hold him, Rivera shouted. He's going to pull the lines. Two nurses grabbed his arms. He threw one of them off like she weighed nothing. Sophie stumbled back and hit a supply cart, sending trays crashing. Sedate him. Rivera reached for the propofol. Wait, Grace said sharply. Don't. He's going to hurt someone. He's in a flashback. If you sedate him now, he wakes up in the same place. You loop it. You make it worse. Grace moved to the head of the bed. She didn't grab him. She didn't restrain him. She got close, dangerously close to his flailing arms, and spoke directly into his ear. You're in a hospital. You're in Chicago. It's Tuesday. You're safe. He swung at her. Grace deflected the arm without stepping back. My name is Grace. You're at St. Gables Medical Center. Whatever happened to you is over. You're here now. His breathing was ragged. His eyes were wild, but something in her voice, the steadiness, the absolute refusal to flinch, began to reach him. Can you hear me? Grace asked. If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. She put her hand in his. His fingers clamped down so hard she felt the bones shift. She didn't pull away. Good, she said. That's real. I'm real. You're here. His eyes focused, slowly, like a man surfacing from deep water. He looked at Grace, and his mouth moved. His voice was destroyed, a whisper wrapped in gravel. They wanted to know about the grid. Grace's blood turned to ice. What grid? Cross asked from behind her. The man's eyes stayed locked on Grace. Sector 47, Bravo 9er. The outpost. They wanted coordinates. Grace stopped breathing. She knew those coordinates. She knew them the way she knew her own heartbeat. Sector 47, Bravo 9. A forward outpost in a country she'd sworn never to name. The last place she'd seen Jack Calloway alive. Grace? Cross moved toward her. What's wrong? She couldn't answer. The room was tilting. The fluorescent lights were becoming sun. The tile floor was becoming sand. The monitor beeping was becoming radio static, then gunfire, then Jack's voice, calm at first, then urgent, then silent. "Grace!" She snapped back, blinked, swallowed something that tasted like metal in memory. "I'm fine," she lied. The man on the bed grabbed her wrist. His grip was desperate, fingers digging into her skin. "You know," he rasped. "I can see it. You know what I'm talking about." "I don't." "They said someone would come. They said they'd send a message. This is it. I'm the message." His eyes were burning into hers. "They're looking for someone from that grid, someone who survived, someone who wasn't supposed to." Grace pulled her wrist free. Her hand was shaking. She shoved it into her pocket. "He needs rest," she said to Cross, her voice mechanical. "Increase the sedation by 0.5. Monitor cardiac rhythm every 10 minutes. She turned and walked out. 2:17 a.m. Cross followed her to the hallway. She was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, jaw locked tight enough to crack teeth. "What happened in there?" Cross demanded. "He's confused. Post-torture psychosis. He's confabulating." "He wasn't confabulating, and you know it. You almost collapsed when he said those coordinates." "I didn't collapse. Your face went white. Your hands shook. I saw it." Grace turned on him. Her eyes were burning. "Then stop looking." "I can't. Not after what I've seen tonight. Not after what Briggs told me." "What did Briggs tell you?" "Enough to know that whatever that man is talking about connects to you. Enough to know that you didn't just leave the military, you vanished. People helped you disappear, Grace. Important people. And now a man shows up at my ER, beaten half to death, reciting coordinates that make you lose your composure for the first time since I've known you." Grace stared at him. The mask was cracking, and she could feel it. Every wall she'd built, every layer of quiet and apology and invisibility, splitting apart under the weight of the one thing she couldn't outrun. "His name was Jack Calloway," she said. The words came out raw, unplanned, like they'd been pushing against her ribs for years and finally broke through. Cross went still. "He was my partner, my teammate, my best friend." Her voice fractured on the last word, but she kept going. "We were on a classified operation. Intel was compromised. We were ambushed. Extraction was delayed by 9 hours. 9 hours in hostile territory with 3 wounded and no support." "Grace, you don't have to." "I had to choose," she said, cutting him off. "Who we could carry and who we couldn't. There were 3 wounded. We could only move 2 and still make the extraction point." Her eyes were dry, but they looked shattered. "I chose to leave Jack. He had the worst injuries. I calculated the odds. I made the tactical decision. The right decision." She paused. The hallway hummed with fluorescent light and distant monitors. "He was alive when I left him. He was conscious. He looked at me and he said, 'Good call, Mercer. Now get them home.'" Her jaw tightened. "He died alone. In the sand. 47 minutes before a second extraction team reached his position. 47 minutes. Cross said nothing. There was nothing to say. Some pain exists in a space where words can't breathe. "Those coordinates," Grace whispered. "That grid, it's where I left him. Someone knows that. Someone is using it." "Using it for what?" "To find me." 2:31 a.m. Grace went back to the man's bedside. He was sedated now, breathing shallow but steady. She pulled a chair close and sat. Not as his nurse, as something else. She studied his hands, calloused, scarred in ways that civilians don't accumulate. The way he'd fought off the nurses, trained reflexes, not panic. The way his body had responded to her voice instead of the sedation. He was military. She was certain of it. She checked his forearms. No tattoos, but there were tan lines where a watch had been and where dog tags would have hung. Both removed, deliberately. Whoever had dropped him here had stripped his identity, but left his injuries. They wanted him found. They wanted him alive. and they wanted someone specific to hear those coordinates. Grace leaned close. "Who sent you?" she whispered. He didn't respond, but his fingers twitched. His lips moved without sound. She leaned closer. "Calloway." Her heart stopped, actually stopped. She felt it, a gap in her chest where a beat should have been. And then it slammed back so hard she grabbed the bed rail to steady herself. He'd said Jack's name. A man with no identity, beaten and left in a parking garage, had just whispered the name of her dead partner. "What about Calloway?" she pressed, her voice barely audible. "What do you know about him?" His eyes opened, just a slit, glassy and unfocused. But he was looking at her. "He's not what?" His mouth worked, a sound that could have been any word. A sound that could have been the most devastating words she'd ever heard. Then the monitor spiked. His heart rate shot to 180. Alarms screamed, his body seized. Not the gradual build of a medical seizure, but the violent, instantaneous lock of a cardiac event. "VTAC!" Grace shouted. "I need a crash cart, now!" Rivera came running. Cross was right behind him. They worked, Grace on compressions, Cross managing the airway. Rivera pushing epinephrine. "Charge to 200, Grace called. "Clear!" The shock hit. His body arched. The monitor flatlined. "Again, 300. "Clear!" Flatline. Grace didn't stop. She went back to compressions, pressing her weight into his chest, counting out loud, refusing to let the rhythm break. "Come on," she said through gritted teeth. "You don't get to die with his name in your mouth. Not here, not tonight." "Grace," Cross said gently, "it's been 4 minutes. I don't care." "Grace, I said I don't care." She kept compressing. Sweat ran down her forehead. Her arms were burning. Rivera looked at Cross. Cross shook his head slowly. Let her work. 5 minutes. 5 minutes and 12 seconds. The monitor blipped. Grace froze, stared at the screen, willed it to blip again. It did. Weak. Irregular. But there. "Sinus rhythm," Rivera breathed. "Oh my God." Grace stepped back. Her chest was heaving. Her scrubs were soaked with sweat. She looked at the man on the bed. Alive. Barely. Impossibly. And felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in 3 years. Hope. And it terrified her more than anything in that ER had tonight. 2:49 a.m. Dominic found her sitting on the floor outside Trauma Bay 3. She had her back against the wall, knees drawn up, head resting on her arms. She wasn't crying. She was past that. He didn't say anything at first. He just lowered his massive frame to the floor beside her. The tile protested. He ignored it. They sat in silence for a full minute. "My dad used to say something," Dominic finally said. "He said the strongest people aren't the ones who win fights. They're the ones who know what losing feels like and get up anyway." Grace lifted her head. Her eyes were red, but dry. "Your dad sounds like a smart man." He was, right up until the bottle got smarter. Dominic rubbed the blank space on his wrist, the unfinished tattoo. "He died when I was 16. Megan was 12. I promised her I'd never let anyone hurt her again." His voice dropped. "I broke that promise tonight." "You didn't break it. You came for her." "I came swinging. I came like him, like the thing I swore I'd never become." Grace looked at him, really looked at him. Past the size, past the tattoos, past the man who'd thrown security guards across a room. She saw the 16-year-old boy who'd made a promise he was never equipped to keep. "You're not your father, Dominic." "How do you know?" "Because your father wouldn't have sat on this floor with a stranger and said what you just said." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "The guy in there? The one who almost died. You know him, don't you?" "No." "You know something about him." Grace pressed her palms flat against the tile. "He knows something about me. Or someone sent him to make sure I know that they know something about me. And I can't figure out which one scares me more. Dominic cracked his knuckles. A habit, a nervous one. Anyone comes through those doors looking for you, they go through me first. Dominic, I mean it. I owe you my sister's life. I owe you mine. Whether you want it or not, I'm here. Grace studied his face. She'd spent 3 years keeping everyone at arm's length. 3 years making sure no one got close enough to be collateral. 3 years building a life specifically designed so that when the past caught up, and she always knew it would, no one else would get hurt. And here was a 7-foot man with a broken heart and fists like sledgehammers, telling her she wasn't alone. You should go be with Megan, she said. I will, after you promise me something. What? Promise me you won't disappear tonight. Grace held his gaze. I won't disappear tonight. He nodded, pulled himself up with a grunt that shook the wall, looked down at her one more time. For what it's worth, he said, whatever you're carrying, you don't carry it like someone who got it wrong. You carry it like someone who survived getting it right when right wasn't good enough. He walked away. His footsteps faded. Grace sat alone on the cold tile and pressed her hand to her chest where the crack had been spreading all night. Jack's voice, distant now, almost gone. You worry too much, Mercer. I know, she whispered. I know. 3:07 a.m. The man in Trauma Bay 3 woke up again, this time quiet, this time coherent. Grace was there when his eyes opened. She'd been there for 20 minutes, sitting in the chair beside his bed, watching his monitors, waiting. He turned his head, saw her. Something crossed his face, not recognition exactly, but confirmation. Like she was exactly who he expected to find. Grace Mercer, he said. His voice was wrecked, but steady. She didn't flinch. You know my name. I know a lot of names. Most of them are dead. Who sent you? He closed his eyes. You already know. I need to hear it. The same people who compromised your mission, the same people who left your team exposed, the same people who let Jack Calloway bleed out in Sector 47 because pulling him out would have confirmed an asset they weren't ready to burn. Grace's hands gripped the chair arms so hard the plastic creaked. Jack wasn't left behind because of my decision, she said, and her voice was the most dangerous thing in that room. Jack was left behind because extraction was delayed. Extraction wasn't delayed, Grace. The man opened his eyes. They were clear now, brutally clear. Extraction was denied. You were never supposed to know that. None of you were. The room contracted. The monitors beeped. The ventilator hissed. And Grace Mercer sat in a plastic chair in a Chicago hospital and felt the foundation of 3 years of grief and guilt and self-punishment crack down the middle. That's not possible, she whispered. It is, and I can prove it. That's why they tried to kill me. He paused, winced, pain breaking through the adrenaline. They're cleaning house. Everyone connected to that operation, handlers, operators, analysts, one by one. I'm the last person who knows what really happened that night. He looked at her. Besides you. Grace stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. Her hands were trembling and she didn't hide them this time. You're telling me Jack died because someone made a call. Not a tactical call, not a field call, a political call. Yes. You're telling me I spent 3 years believing I killed my partner and it was a lie. Yes. Grace turned away from him. She pressed both hands flat against the wall and leaned into it, her forehead touching the cool surface, her breath coming in sharp, controlled bursts. 3 years. 3 years of nightmares. 3 years of waking up calculating how long 47 minutes is when you're bleeding alone in the dark. 3 years of believing she'd made the wrong choice. And it was a lie. The whole thing, constructed to protect someone else's secret. She pushed off the wall, turned back. Her eyes were dry and burning. Who gave the order? The man shook his head. Not yet, not here. Too many ears. Tell me. Grace, tell me who killed my partner. He held her gaze for a long time. Then he said, get me out of this hospital alive and I'll give you everything. Names, documents, the recording of the order itself. Grace stared at him. Her pulse was a war drum. Her mind was running calculations she hadn't used in 3 years. Threat assessment, exit strategies, asset protection. She was thinking like a SEAL again. And it felt like coming home to a house that was already on fire. 3:19 a.m. She walked out of the bay and nearly collided with Cross, who was standing just outside the door with a look on his face that told her he'd heard every word. Nathan, don't, he said, raising a hand. Don't tell me you're fine. Don't tell me to forget what I just heard. And for God's sake, don't tell me this isn't my problem. It isn't your problem. You're in my ER. He's in my trauma bay. Whatever this is, it's been my problem since midnight. Grace looked at him with exhaustion so deep it seemed to reach her bones. If what he's saying is true, then people are coming. Not police, not hospital administrators. People who erase problems. And anyone standing near me when they arrive becomes a problem. Cross crossed his arms. Then I guess I'm a problem. Nathan, I was a combat medic before I was a doctor, Grace. I know what it looks like when someone's trying to survive alone, and I know what it costs. He stepped closer. You don't have to do this by yourself. Grace felt something dangerous rising in her throat, something that wanted to believe him, something that wanted to stop running. She swallowed it. I need 48 hours, she said. Keep him stable. Keep him off the official records. Can you do that? Cross stared at her. You're asking me to falsify hospital records. I'm asking you to save a man's life. The paperwork is secondary. He ran a hand through his hair, looked at the ceiling, looked at her. 48 hours, he said, and then you tell me everything. Deal. She turned to go. Cross caught her arm. Grace, the people you're talking about, the ones who erase problems, are they already here? Grace looked toward the ER entrance. Through the glass, in the amber wash of the parking lot lights, a black sedan sat idling. It hadn't been there an hour ago. Yes, she said quietly. They are. 3:24 a.m. Grace didn't go to the sedan. She didn't call security. She didn't run. She walked back to the nurse's station, sat down, and opened a patient chart like nothing in the world was wrong. Her pen moved across the page, steady, controlled, but her mind was running a different operation entirely. 2 exits, main entrance in the ambulance bay. Side entrance requires a code. Cross has it, she has it, security has it. Loading dock on the basement level connects to the parking garage. Stairwell B leads directly there. If the sedan held who she thought it held, they wouldn't come in loud. They'd come in quiet. Badges, credentials, official language designed to make hospital administrators cooperate without asking questions. She had maybe an hour, maybe less. You're doing that thing again, Linda said, dropping into the chair beside her. Grace looked up. What thing? The thing where you look like a normal person doing normal work while your brain is clearly building a rocket ship. Linda crossed her arms. I've been a nurse long enough to know when someone's about to do something stupid. You've got that look. I don't have a look. Honey, you've got the biggest look I've ever seen. And I watched my ex-husband lie to me for 12 years, so I'm an expert. Grace almost smiled. Almost. Linda, if anyone comes asking about the patient in Trauma Bay 3, you haven't seen him. Linda's expression changed. The humor drained away. Grace, what's going on? I can't tell you that. Can't or won't. Both. And it's better that way. Linda studied her for a long time. Then she leaned forward. I've watched you all night. I watched you save a man from cyanide poisoning by yourself. I watched you bring a 6-year-old back from the dead. I watched you take down a human tank with your bare hands and then offer him water. She paused. Whatever you're about to do, I trust you, but you better come back. Grace held her gaze. Thank you, Linda. Don't thank me. Come back. 3:33 a.m. Grace found Dominic in the chair beside Megan's bed. He was awake. She doubted he'd slept at all. I need your help, she said. He sat up straight. No questions, no hesitation. Just those two massive hands gripping the armrests, ready. What do you need? There's a man in Trauma Bay 3. Someone wants him dead. I need to make sure that doesn't happen. Who wants him dead? People who don't leave witnesses. Dominic's jaw tightened. He looked at Megan, sleeping now, color better, breathing steady, then back at Grace. She's stable? He asked. She's stable. She'll sleep through the night. He stood, all 7 feet of him. The chair creaked with relief. Tell me where to be. The side entrance, stairwell B. If anyone comes through that door who doesn't work here, you stop them. Stop them how? However you have to. He cracked his knuckles. That nervous habit again, except this time it didn't look nervous. It looked like preparation. I threw 2 security guards across a room tonight for the wrong reasons. Might feel good to do it for the right ones. Grace put her hand on his arm. Dominic, these aren't security guards. They won't go down easy, and they won't come alone. Neither will I. He looked at her with absolute certainty. My sister is alive because of you. That man in there is alive because of you. Whatever debt I owe, I'm paying it tonight. Grace nodded. Stairwell B, don't leave that post. I won't. He walked away, and for a moment Grace watched him go. This enormous, broken, beautiful man who'd come through those doors swinging at the world and was now standing guard for a stranger because a woman half his size had shown him what strength actually looked like. Jack would have liked him, she thought. Then she shut that door in her mind and moved on. 3:41 a.m. Cross was in his office, phone pressed to his ear. He hung up when Grace walked in. I just called hospital security and told them to increase coverage on the East Wing, he said. Told them we had a credible threat related to the pile-up patients. It's thin, but it buys us bodies near the trauma bays. That's smart. I also called Briggs again. Grace froze. You did what? I told him someone showed up at my ER half dead with information about a compromised SEAL operation, and that a sedan with government plates is sitting in my parking lot. Nathan, you don't understand what you've... He's on his way. Grace stared at him. Briggs is coming here? He said he'd be here by 0500. He also said... Cross paused, running his hand over his face. He said if the sedan moves before he arrives, get you and the patient out through the basement and don't stop driving until you hit Wisconsin. Wisconsin. He has a safe house, apparently. Grace leaned against the doorframe. The exhaustion was hitting her in waves now. Not just physical, but the kind that comes from holding a mask in place for so long that your real face forgets how to exist without it. You shouldn't have called him, she said. You've put yourself in this now. You can't take that back. I was in it the moment I hired a Navy SEAL and pretended she was a rookie nurse. Cross looked at her. I knew something was off from day one. Your hands were too steady. Your instincts were too sharp. I told myself it didn't matter because you were good at the job. But it does matter, Grace. It all matters. I never lied to you. No, you just didn't tell me the truth. And in my experience, that's worse. Grace absorbed the hit. He was right. She knew he was right. After tonight, she said, you'll know everything. Whatever Briggs brings, whatever the man in Bay 3 has to say, you'll hear it all. You've earned that. Cross nodded slowly. And then what? And then you decide if you still want me in your ER. That decision was made 3 hours ago. You're staying. 3:58 a.m. Grace went back to Trauma Bay 3. The man, she still didn't have his name, was awake again. More alert this time. The sedation was wearing off, and the pain was settling in to fill the space it left behind. I need a name, Grace said, sitting beside him. A real one. He studied her. Garrett Cole. Were you DEVGRU? Adjacent. Intelligence support. I was the guy who told guys like you where to go and what to find when you got there. You were our handler? Not yours specifically, but I was in the room when your mission was planned. I was in the room when it was compromised. And I was in the room when someone decided that Jack Calloway was an acceptable loss. Grace's nails dug into her palms. Who? A man named Victor Rains, deputy director of a joint task force that doesn't officially exist. He ran the intelligence side of your operation. When the ambush happened, the extraction team was 7 minutes out. Rains pulled them back. Why? Because getting your team out would have exposed an asset, a source inside the enemy's command structure. Rains had spent 4 years building that asset. He wasn't going to burn it to save 5 operators. 5 people, Grace said, her voice shaking for the first time. 5 human beings. To Rains, you were math, acceptable casualties in exchange for strategic advantage. Cole winced, shifting on the bed. The asset was compromised anyway. 6 months later, everything Rains sacrificed your team for was worthless within half a year. Grace stood up, walked to the corner of the bay, pressed her fist against the wall, not punching it, just pressing, feeling the solid surface against her knuckles. Reminding herself that this was real, this was happening, the ground beneath 3 years of grief had just opened up and swallowed everything she thought she knew. Jack died for nothing, she said. Jack died because someone decided his life was worth less than a political calculation. That's not nothing. That's murder. She turned back. And the proof? On a drive, hidden, not here, but I can get you to it. Cole's eyes were sharp despite the pain. Rains knows I have it. That's why he sent a team to grab me. They got the interrogation, but they didn't get the location. I didn't break. You held out under torture? I held out because I kept thinking about the 5 people Rains threw away. I figured I owed them at least that much. Grace looked at him. This broken, bleeding man who'd taken a beating meant to shatter him and had held a secret in his teeth because he believed he owed something to people he'd helped condemn. Thank you, she said. The words were inadequate. She said them anyway. Don't thank me yet. Get me out alive first. 4:12 a.m. The sedan moved. Grace saw it from the corridor window. The headlights flicked on. The car pulled slowly out of the parking lot and disappeared around the corner of the building. That wasn't retreat. That was repositioning. She pulled out her phone and texted Cross 2 words. They're moving. Cross responded in 10 seconds. How long? Minutes. Grace moved fast now. She went to Trauma Bay 3, disconnected Cole from the non-essential monitors, and transferred him to a portable unit. He grimaced but didn't complain. Can you walk? She asked. Define walk. Can you stay upright if I support you? I can try. Trying isn't good enough. Can you or can't you? He gritted his teeth and swung his legs over the side of the bed. The pain hit him like a truck. She saw it in his eyes, the way they went glassy for a second. But he pushed through and planted his feet on the floor. I can, he said. Grace got under his arm. He was heavier than he looked, and he looked heavy. They moved out of the bay and into the corridor. Sophie was at the nurse's station. Her eyes went wide. Grace? What are you? Sophie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. If anyone comes through the main entrance in the next 30 minutes asking about a patient with no ID, you tell them he was transferred to county. You don't know when. You don't know who authorized it. Can you do that? Sophie's face was a war between fear and trust. Trust won. County, don't know when, don't know who. Good girl. Grace kept moving. 4:19 a.m. They reached the stairwell B entrance. Dominic was there. He'd found a metal folding chair and was sitting with his back against the wall, arms crossed, looking like a bouncer at the gates of hell. He stood when he saw them. He the package? He's the package. Help me. Dominic took Cole's other side. The difference was immediate. Cole's weight shifted like it was nothing, and they moved twice as fast down the corridor. Basement, Grace said. Loading dock. There should be a hospital transport van with keys in the lockbox. You know the code for the lockbox? Dominic asked. I memorized every code in this building my first week. He looked at her sideways. Of course you did. They hit the stairwell. Going down was harder than Grace expected. Cole was fading. His breathing was getting shallow, his weight increasing as his strength drained. Halfway down, his legs buckled. Hey, Grace said sharply. Stay with me. One more flight. I'm trying. Don't try. Do. One foot, then the other. That's all. Cole laughed, a broken, painful sound. You sound like my drill instructor. Your drill instructor didn't keep you alive tonight. Move. He moved. 4:26 a.m. They reached the loading dock. Grace found the transport van, punched the lockbox code, grabbed the keys. She got Cole into the back, checked his vitals, dropping but manageable, and turned to Dominic. Go back upstairs. Be with Megan. No. Dominic, I said no. You're not driving this man to wherever you're driving him with no backup. I'm coming. If something happens to you, Megan has nobody. That hit him. She saw it land, the flinch, the quick tightening around his eyes. But he set his jaw and shook his head. Megan has a whole hospital looking after her. You have nobody. I don't need... Stop. His voice was gentle but immovable. Stop pretending you don't need people. You've been alone long enough. I can see it. Everyone in that ER can see it. You saved every person you touched tonight, and not one of them could save you back because you won't let them. Grace opened her mouth, closed it. Let me help, Dominic said. Not because I owe you, because I want to. She stared at him for 3 long seconds. Then she tossed him the keys. You drive. I'll keep him stable in the back. Dominic caught the keys in one massive hand. Where? North. Briggs gave Cross an address in Wisconsin. I'll navigate. Wisconsin. At 4 in the morning, in a hospital van. He almost smiled. Weirdest Tuesday of my life. It's Wednesday now. Even weirder. 4:31 a.m. They pulled out of the loading dock. Grace was in the back with Cole, monitoring his portable unit, adjusting his IV, keeping his airway clear. Dominic drove carefully, too carefully, she thought, for a man his size, checking mirrors every few seconds. They'd gone 3 blocks when Cole grabbed her arm. Grace, save your energy. Grace, listen to me. Raines isn't just cleaning up the operation. He's being promoted. Senate confirmation hearing in 2 weeks. Joint Intelligence Committee chair. Grace went cold. He's being put in charge of oversight? The fox running the henhouse. If he gets confirmed, every record of what happened gets classified for 50 years. Every witness disappears. Permanently. Including you. Including me. Including you. Cole's grip tightened. He knows you're alive. He's known since you surfaced at St. Gabriel's. You used the takedown technique on that big guy, and someone in that ER talked. Social media, a text, something. It pinged an alert in a system that's been watching for you for 3 years. Grace closed her eyes. The one thing she'd feared since the moment Dominic Hale crashed through those doors. The one consequence she'd calculated and accepted in the 3 seconds before she stepped into his path. Visibility. How long has he known? She asked. Since this morning, less than 24 hours. Cole coughed. Blood flecked his lips. Grace wiped it away and adjusted his oxygen. That's why they sent you here, she said. Not just to deliver a message, to flush me out. Yes. So right now, wherever Raines is, he knows I'm running. He knows you're doing exactly what he'd expect you to do. Protect the asset, move to a safe location, go operational. And he has a team waiting. Cole looked at her with eyes that held nothing back. He has 3 teams, one at the hospital, one covering the interstate north, and one already at the Wisconsin safe house. Grace's blood stopped moving. The safe house is compromised? Briggs doesn't know. They got to his communications 2 days ago. Dominic, stop the van. Dominic hit the brakes. The van lurched. What? What's wrong? Grace climbed to the front. Her mind was running faster than it had in 3 years. Every calculation, every variable, every possible outcome branching like a decision tree she'd been trained to navigate in her sleep. We can't go north, she said. Wisconsin is a trap. Then where? Grace pulled out her phone. She had one number she'd never used, a number given to her the day she disappeared by a woman she'd served with who'd made her own exit years earlier. In case everything burns, the woman had said, call me and I'll build you a door. Grace dialed. It rang 4 times. A woman's voice, alert despite the hour. I wondered when you'd call. Rachel, I need a door. How many coming through? 3, 1 critical. Timeline? Hours, maybe less. A pause, then. South Side, 43rd and Halstead. Red brick building, 2nd floor. Knock twice, pause, knock 3 times. I'll have medical and transport ready. Rachel, don't say thank you, just get here alive. The line went dead. Grace looked at Dominic. Change of plans. South Side, I'll give you directions. Dominic turned the wheel. You have a lot of secret friends for someone who says she doesn't need people. They're not friends. They're insurance policies. Is that what I am? Grace looked at him. This man who'd been a stranger 6 hours ago, who tried to kill her, who she'd put on the floor, who she'd offered water, who was now driving a stolen hospital van through Chicago at 4:30 in the morning because she'd asked him to. No, she said quietly, you're something I wasn't planning for. 4:38 a.m. Cross stood in the empty trauma bay 3 and stared at the bed where a man had been dying 20 minutes ago. The sheets were still warm. The monitors were still on. The IV stand stood like a skeleton with nothing left to feed. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Package is moving. Stay clean. Destroy this message. Grace. He deleted it. Then he walked to the nurse's station, where Linda and Sophie were pretending to chart and failing at it. If anyone asks, Cross said, the patient in Bay 3 was transferred to Cook County per standard overflow protocol. I authorized it. The paperwork will be filed in the morning. Linda nodded. Cook County, overflow, got it. Sophie bit her lip. Dr. Cross, is Grace okay? Cross looked at the empty corridor where Grace had walked away, where she'd carried a dying man on her shoulders and disappeared into a stairwell with a giant who'd been her enemy 6 hours ago. Grace Mercer, he said slowly, is the most capable person I've ever met. She's going to be fine. He didn't believe it, but Sophie needed to hear it, and sometimes that was enough. 4:44 a.m. 2 men walked through the main entrance, suits, no badges. The older one had silver at his temples. The younger one carried a tablet. They approached the nurse's station. The older one smiled, warm, practiced, completely empty. Good evening. We're looking for a patient admitted through your ER tonight. Male, late 30s, no identification. Significant injuries. We believe he may be a federal witness and we need to ensure his safety. Linda looked up from her chart. She'd been a nurse in Detroit during the crack epidemic. She'd been a nurse in Memphis during a gang war. She'd been threatened, bribed, and once held at knife point by a patient's boyfriend. She was not impressed by suits. Bay 3 patient was transferred to Cook County about an hour ago, she said. Overflow protocol. Dr. Cross authorized it. The younger man checked his tablet. His jaw tightened. There's no transfer record. Paperwork's pending. It's been a busy night. You're welcome to call county and verify. The older man's smile didn't change, but his eyes did. The warmth vanished. What replaced it was cold assessment. The look of a man deciding how much trouble a person was worth. And the nurse who was treating him, Grace Mercer? Linda didn't blink. Shift ended. She went home. At 4 in the morning? Honey, nurses worked 12-hour shifts in an ER that just handled a mass casualty event. She was dead on her feet. I sent her home myself. The men exchanged a glance. The younger one typed something on his tablet. "We'll need to speak with Dr. Cross," the older one said. "He's in surgery. Might be a while." Linda smiled. It was the sweetest, most southern, most absolutely bulletproof smile she'd ever deployed. "Can I take a message?" They didn't leave a message. They left. Linda waited until they were out the door. Then she picked up the phone and called Cross. "They were here, 2 of them. They're looking for Grace and the patient." "What did you tell them?" "Cook County transfer. Grace went home." "Did they buy it?" "The older one didn't. He'll be back. And next time he won't ask nicely." Cross hung up. His hands were shaking. He wasn't built for this, for secrets and sedans and men who smiled while they calculated whether you were worth killing. He was built for medicine, for saving lives inside the clean, bright lines of a hospital. But Grace Mercer had walked into his ER 3 weeks ago, and the lines had never been cleaned since. 4:52 a.m. The van pulled up to 43rd and Halsted, red brick, 2nd floor. Grace climbed out and knocked, twice, pause, 3 times. The door opened. A woman stood there, mid-40s, dark hair cropped short, eyes that missed nothing. She looked at Grace, then at Dominic towering behind her, then at Cole sagging between them. "You always did know how to make an entrance," Rachel said. "I need medical, transport, in 48 hours. You'll get 12. After that, even I can't hide you." Rachel stepped aside. "Bring him in." They carried Cole up the stairs. Rachel had a room ready, not a hospital room, but close enough. If supplies, monitors, surgical kit, oxygen, the setup of someone who'd been expecting this moment for a long time. Grace laid Cole on the bed, checked his vitals, stable enough, barely. Rachel pulled her aside. "Who's the giant?" "A friend." "Since when do you have friends?" "Since tonight, apparently." Rachel studied Dominic, who was standing in the doorway looking like he wasn't sure if he'd wandered into a spy movie or a fever dream. "He trustworthy?" "He drove a stolen hospital van across Chicago at 4 in the morning without asking where we were going." "I'd say that qualifies." Rachel nodded. "And the man on the bed?" "Garrett Cole, intelligence support. He has proof that a deputy director named Victor Raines deliberately sabotaged an extraction to protect an asset. 5 operators were compromised. 1 died." Grace paused. "Jack." Rachel's face changed. She'd known Jack. Everyone in their world had known Jack. Raines killed Jack? Raines let Jack die, and now he's 2 weeks away from a Senate confirmation that will bury every trace of it forever. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she walked to a cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a laptop and 2 phones. "Then we have 12 hours to make sure that doesn't happen." Grace took the phone. It felt heavier than it should have, because picking it up meant stepping back into a world she'd spent 3 years clawing her way out of. A world of operations and assets and acceptable losses. A world that had taken Jack and called it math. She turned it on. "For you, Jack," she whispered. "Everything from here is for you." 5:03 a.m. Grace worked through the first hour like a machine that had remembered its purpose. Rachel's laptop connected to a secure server that bounced through 6 countries before landing anywhere useful. Grace's fingers moved across the keyboard with the same precision she'd used on airways and arterial bleeds all night. Fast, deliberate, no wasted motion. Cole drifted in and out of consciousness, but in his lucid moments he fed her everything. Account numbers, server locations, the name of a dead drop site in Arlington, Virginia, where he'd hidden a USB drive containing the original extraction order, the one Victor Raines had personally countermanded 47 minutes before Jack Calloway bled out in the sand. "The drive has the audio," Cole said, his voice threadbare. Rains on a secure line telling the extraction team to stand down. His voice, his words, his order. Who else has heard it? No one alive. The analyst who recorded it died in a car accident 8 months ago. Single vehicle. Wet road. Cole's mouth twisted. Convenient. Grace stopped typing. How many people has Rains killed to keep this buried? That I know of? 7. That I suspect? 12. Cole closed his eyes. I was supposed to be 13. Rachel stood at the window, watching the street. She hadn't moved in 20 minutes. We've got a problem, she said without turning around. Which one? The drive is in Arlington. We're in Chicago, and Rains has teams between here and there. I'm not going to Arlington, Grace said. Rachel turned. Then how do you plan to? I'm going to make Arlington come to me. Grace picked up one of the burner phones. Cole, the dead drop. Is it electronic or physical? Physical. Taped to the underside of a bench in Section 32 of Arlington National Cemetery. Grace's hand tightened on the phone. Arlington. Where they buried the heroes. Where they buried the ones like Jack who never got a headstone because their missions never officially existed. I know someone at Arlington, Grace said quietly. Someone who owes Jack more than a debt. She dialed. It rang 7 times. A man's voice answered, groggy, irritated, military even in sleep. Who is this? Tommy, it's Grace. Silence. A long, loaded silence. Grace Mercer. I'll be damned. Master Sergeant Tommy Vance, retired, decorated, the man who'd trained Jack Calloway from a green recruit into the operator he became. The man who'd given the eulogy at the classified memorial service. The man who'd wept when he thought no one was watching. I thought you were dead. Not yet. I need a favor. At 5 in the morning, it's about Jack. Another silence, shorter this time, harder. Tell me. Grace told him. Not everything, just enough. The compromised extraction. Rains, the audio recording. The bench in Section 32. Tommy listened without interrupting. When she finished, his breathing had changed. Heavier, controlled. The breathing of a man containing something volcanic. You're telling me Jack died because some suit pulled the plug to save a source that didn't even last the year? Yes. You're telling me I gave a eulogy for a man who was murdered by his own chain of command? Yes. Section 32, which bench? 3rd from the east entrance, USB drive taped underneath, black casing. I'll have it in 2 hours. Tommy, don't tell me to be careful. Don't tell me it's dangerous. I spent 30 years being careful and dangerous. Jack Calloway was the best young operator I ever trained. And if someone killed him and covered it up, I will crawl through broken glass to make it right. His voice cracked, just once, then reformed like steel. 2 hours. I'll call this number. The line went dead. Grace set the phone down. Her hands were trembling again. She pressed them flat against the table and breathed. Dominic appeared beside her with a cup of coffee that Rachel had brewed. He set it down without a word. Then he sat across from her and waited. You don't have to stay, Grace said. You keep saying that because it keeps being true. And I keep staying, so maybe we should both accept the situation. He leaned forward. Who's Jack? Grace wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. The warmth seeped into her fingers. He was my partner, my teammate, the person who kept me human when the work tried to turn me into something else. You loved him. It wasn't a question. Grace looked at Dominic and saw no judgment, just understanding. The kind that comes from someone who knows exactly what it means to love someone you can't protect. I loved him the way you love Megan, she said. Not romantic, deeper. The kind of love where their survival becomes your operating system, where if they go down, part of your code just stops running. Dominic nodded slowly. And your code stopped. For a long time, I rebuilt it, piece by piece. Nursing school was part of that. St. Gabriel's was part of that. Becoming someone quiet and invisible and useful. That was the whole plan. Plans change. They did. About 8 hours ago, when a 7-foot man with anger issues crashed through my ER. Dominic almost smiled. Sorry about that. Don't be. If you hadn't come in, I'd still be hiding. And the man who killed Jack would still be getting away with it. 5:47 a.m. Cole's vitals dropped, sharp and sudden. Rachel called out the numbers, and Grace was at his side in seconds, adjusting the IV, checking the oxygen, recalculating dosages in her head. His pressure's tanking, Rachel said. He needs a hospital. A hospital is exactly where they'll be looking. Grace, he's going to die. Grace looked at Cole. His face was gray. His breathing was shallow. The portable monitor showed numbers that were heading in only one direction. She'd seen this before. In the field, the body holding on through sheer will until the adrenaline faded and the damage caught up. Cole had stayed alive long enough to deliver his message. Now his body was collecting the bill. Garrett, Grace said, leaning close, stay with me. His eyes flickered open. Tired. I know, but Tommy is getting the drive. We're close. I need you to hold on. You sound like Jack. Grace's throat tightened. What? He used to say that. On the radio, during ops. Hold on, we're close. Even when we weren't. Cole's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. He was a terrible liar, but everyone held on anyway, because he asked. Then I'm asking, hold on. Cole's hand found hers. His grip was weak. Grace, if I don't make it, you're making it. If I don't. The drive isn't the only copy. I sent a backup, encrypted, to a journalist named Rebecca Walsh at the Washington Tribune. She doesn't know what she has yet. The decryption key is in my right boot, inside the sole. Grace looked at his boots, still on, still laced. She pulled the right one off carefully, found the seam in the sole, and extracted a micro SD card and a folded slip of paper with a 32-character encryption key written in pencil. You brilliant, paranoid man, she breathed. Learn from the best. His eyes closed. And the worst. Grace pocketed the card and the key, then she went back to keeping him alive. 6:15 a.m. Rachel's phone buzzed. She answered, listened, and hung up without speaking. Her face was tight. That was my contact at O'Hare. 2 private jets landed in the last hour. One from Virginia, one from Maryland. Rains is escalating. He's bringing more teams, Grace said. He's bringing everyone. Whatever he's planning, it's happening today. Grace looked at the clock. Tommy needed 2 hours. It had been just over 1. Can you get a message to cross at St. Gabriel's? Grace asked. Secure? As secure as possible. Rachel handed her a phone. Grace dialed the hospital's main line, asked for the ER, and waited through 3 transfers before Cross picked up. Nathan, it's me. Grace, are you safe? For now, listen to me. 2 men came to the ER looking for the patient. They'll come back, probably with more authority and less patience. They already did, 30 minutes ago. 3 of them this time. Hospital administrator let them into the records room. Cross's voice was strained. Grace, they're pulling your employment file, your background check, everything. Let them. There's nothing real in there anyway. They also talked to security. Someone mentioned seeing you leave through the loading dock with a large male and a patient on a gurney. Grace closed her eyes. Who? I don't know, but they know you ran, and they know you took Cole. Nathan, I need you to do something for me. It's going to sound crazy. Crazier than the last 12 hours? Call the Tribune in Washington. Ask for Rebecca Walsh. Tell her to check her encrypted files. The story she's been waiting for is about to unlock. Grace, I'm a doctor. You're the only person I trust right now who isn't either on the run, standing guard, or bleeding out on a table. Please. Cross was quiet for 5 seconds. Then, Rebecca Walsh, Washington Tribune, encrypted files. Thank you. Grace, Briggs showed up 20 minutes ago. He's in my office. He's not happy. Put him on. A shuffle. Then Briggs's voice, cold, clipped, furious. You went to the South Side instead of Wisconsin. Wisconsin was compromised. Raines had a team waiting. Silence, then quieter. How do you know that? Cole told me. Raines intercepted your communications 2 days ago. The safe house was a trap. Briggs said nothing for a long time. When he spoke again, the fury had been replaced by something older. Shame. I led them right to you. You didn't know. I should have. That's my job. That was always my job. His voice broke. Just a fracture. Just a moment. Grace, I'm sorry. For all of it. For not seeing what Raines was doing. For not protecting your team. For letting you carry this alone for 3 years. You can apologize later. Right now I need you to do what you do best. Which is? Make calls, burn favors, get every contact you have in the intelligence oversight community on the phone and tell them that Victor Raines's confirmation hearing needs to be delayed. On what grounds? On the grounds that he murdered an American SEAL operator and is currently running a domestic cleanup operation to destroy the evidence. Briggs exhaled. You have proof? I will, within the hour. Then God help us all, he paused, and God help Raines, because you won't. 6:52 a.m. Tommy called. I have it, he said. His voice was rough. Sat on that bench for 10 minutes before I reached under. You know why? Why? Because it's 30 feet from where they held Jack's memorial. 30 feet. Whoever hid this drive knew exactly what they were doing. He paused. I listened to the recording, Grace. Tommy, I listened to it. Raines's voice, clear as day. Stand down extraction. Asset preservation takes priority. Operators are expendable. Those were his words, expendable. Grace gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. I'm sending the file now, Tommy said. Encrypted link. And Grace, when this goes public, and it will go public, I want to be standing next to you. Jack would have wanted that. Jack would have wanted to be standing here himself. Yeah, he would have, but he can't. So we do it for him. The file arrived 30 seconds later. Grace downloaded it, verified the audio, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not the crack that had been spreading all night. Something else. Something harder. The crack was sealing. Not with forgetting. Not with peace. But with purpose. She had the weapon. Now she needed to aim it. 7:04 a.m. Grace sent 3 files simultaneously. The audio recording to Rebecca Walsh at the Tribune, unlocked by the encryption key from Cole's boot. A copy to Briggs with instructions to forward it to every member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And a third copy to a secure server that Rachel maintained, insurance in case everyone else failed. Then she sat back and waited. She didn't have to wait long. 7:11 a.m. Rachel's phone rang, then the other burner, then Grace's. Tribune is running it, Rachel said, reading a message. Walsh is pushing it as breaking news. Lead story. Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Briggs. 3 senators have called emergency session. Confirmation hearing suspended pending investigation. Raines has been asked to surrender his credentials. Grace read the message twice, then a third time. The words blurred and she realized her eyes were wet. Dominic was beside her. He didn't say anything. He just put his enormous hand on her shoulder and held it there. Is it over? He asked quietly. The beginning of over, Grace said. Raines still has resources. He'll fight. But the truth is out. The truth is out. Cole stirred on the bed. His eyes opened, clearer than they'd been in hours. He looked at Grace. Did it work? It worked. The recording is public. The hearing is suspended. Cole closed his eyes and let out a breath that seemed to empty him completely. Jack would be proud of you, Jack would be making a joke right now, Grace said, and her voice finally broke. Not dramatically, not loudly, just a fracture in the last wall she had, the one she'd built between herself and the grief she'd been carrying like a boulder for 3 years. She pressed her hand to her mouth. One sob escaped. Just one. Then she breathed it back in and straightened. Dominic pretended not to see. Rachel handed her a tissue without comment. Cole kept his eyes closed and gave her the privacy of his silence. That was enough. It was more than enough. 7:38 a.m. Cross called. FBI just arrived at St. Gabriel's. Not Raines's people. Real FBI. They want to talk to everyone. They're treating it as a federal investigation. Good. Grace, they want to talk to you too. I know. Are you coming back? Grace looked around the room. At Rachel, who'd built a door in the middle of the night because a woman she hadn't spoken to in 3 years needed one. At Dominic, who'd gone from swinging at her face to standing guard over her life in the span of 8 hours. At Cole, who'd held a secret under torture because he believed 5 strangers deserved justice. Yes, Grace said, I'm coming back. 8:15 a.m. The hospital van pulled into St. Gabriel's loading dock. Grace climbed out first. Cross was waiting. So was Briggs. Older than she remembered, grayer, carrying a weight she recognized because she carried the same one. Grace, Briggs said. Colonel, it's just Ray now. He extended his hand. She took it. His grip was firm and steady, and when he didn't let go right away, she understood it wasn't a handshake. It was an apology delivered the only way a man like him knew how. Raines is finished, Briggs said. Justice Department is opening a formal investigation. His teams have been recalled. The cleanup operation is shut down. And the people he killed, the 7, maybe 12, every case will be reopened. I've made sure of it. Grace nodded. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was a start. They brought Cole in through the side entrance. Cross had a trauma team waiting, a real team this time, with real equipment and real authority to treat him openly. He saved Jack, Grace told Cross as they wheeled Cole away. He saved all of us. I'll take care of him, Cross said. I promise. Grace believed him. For the first time in 3 years, she believed a promise. 8:40 a.m. The FBI interview lasted 2 hours. Grace told them everything. Not the classified details. Those would come later, through proper channels, with lawyers in oversight and the machinery of accountability that she'd stopped believing in, but hadn't stopped hoping for. She told them about Raines, about the extraction order, about Jack, about the 3 years she'd spent hiding in plain sight, trying to build a life out of the wreckage of the one that had been stolen from her. The lead agent, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a steel spine, listened without interrupting. When Grace finished, the agent closed her notebook and said, Ms. Mercer, on behalf of the Bureau, I want you to know that what happened to your team was a betrayal of everything this country is supposed to stand for. We will pursue this to the end. Grace looked at her. People have said that to me before. I know, and I know why you don't believe it. The agent stood, but I'm saying it anyway, because someone should. 10:30 a.m. The ER was quiet. The morning shift had taken over. The chaos of the night was already becoming legend. The giant, the pileup, the cyanide, the code blue, the mysterious patient, the rookie nurse who'd held it all together. Grace stood at the nurse's station. Her badge was crooked. Her scrubs were the ones she'd put on 16 hours ago. She smelled like sweat and antiseptic and the ghost of chemical exposure. Sophie approached her shyly. Grace? The little boy, Caleb, his mom wants to see you. Grace walked to Caleb's room. Karen Powell was sitting beside her son's bed, holding his unburned hand. Caleb was awake. His eyes were bright. He was holding a stuffed bear that someone from pediatrics had brought him. You're her, Karen said when she saw Grace. You're the one who saved him. The whole team saved him. That's not what they told me. Karen stood. Her eyes were raw from crying, but her voice was steady. They told me you wouldn't stop. They told me everyone else was ready to call it, and you said no. You said no, and you brought him back. Grace looked at Caleb. He waved the bear at her. She waved back. He's a fighter, Grace said. He did the hard part. Karen pulled her into a hug. Grace stiffened. She always stiffened, and then slowly let herself be held. Just for a moment, just long enough to remember what it felt like. 11 a.m. Dominic was in Megan's room when Grace found him. Megan was sitting up eating Jell-O, looking annoyed at the IV in her arm. She was going to be fine. The toxin had been neutralized. The bruises would heal. The story behind them was already being handled by a detective who'd arrived that morning. She's complaining about the food, Dominic said. That's how I know she's okay. The food is terrible, Megan said, and my brother is hovering. I'm not hovering. You've been sitting in that chair for 12 hours. That's hovering. Grace smiled. A real one. The first one in longer than she could remember. Dominic stood and walked Grace to the hallway. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the leather band, his father's, and held it out. I gave this to you last night. I meant it. Dominic, I can't. My father believed strength was about knowing when not to hit back. You showed me that. You showed this whole hospital that, so you keep it. And when things get hard, because they will, you look at it and remember that a 7-foot idiot who tried to punch you in the face ended up trusting you with the only thing his father left him. Grace took the band, slipped it onto her wrist. It fit perfectly, just like before. Thank you, she said. Thank you, he said, for not giving up on me when I came through those doors. You were scared, not dangerous. You were the only person who knew the difference. 11:30 a.m. Grace stood alone in the quiet room Cross had set aside. The plaque was on the wall now, the one with no ranks, no units, just names. Cross had asked her what to put on it, and she'd written one word, Calloway. She touched the cool metal, traced the letters with her fingertip, felt the years of grief and guilt and silence press against her chest one final time. Not to break her, but to remind her they were still there, that they would always be there. That surviving didn't mean forgetting. I found the truth, she whispered. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the truth I was afraid of. She'd spent 3 years believing she killed Jack, believing her tactical decision, the choice to leave him behind, was the thing that ended his life. It wasn't. It was never her. But knowing that didn't erase the 47 minutes, didn't change the fact that he died alone, didn't bring back the laugh or the voice or the tap on the helmet. I can't fix it, she said to the plaque. I can't undo it, but I can make sure it meant something. I can make sure you meant something. She pressed her palm flat against his name, held it there, let the metal warm under her skin. I'm staying, Jack, right here, not hiding anymore, not running, not apologizing for being strong. The ER buzzer sounded. Another patient, another crisis, another life that needed someone who wouldn't freeze. Grace Mercer adjusted her badge, straightened her scrubs, touched the leather band on her wrist. She walked out of the quiet room and back into the light. Not a soldier, not a ghost, not a woman hiding from a life that had tried to destroy her. A nurse, a healer, a fighter who'd finally stopped fighting herself. The doors opened. The next patient came in. Grace stepped forward, and this time she didn't disappear. If this story moved you, if you believe the quiet ones carry the heaviest strength, don't scroll past. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, heroes don't always look the way we expect. Sometimes they're standing right in front of you, wearing scrubs that are a size too big, with hands that never shake and a heart that never stops fighting. Stay with us. These stories only exist because you choose to listen.